right, hello everyone. Welcome to Bible Talk with Amery. Today we're doing a conversation on climate change and the one world government, one world religion. There are some very interesting events happening right now in politics and in the religious world. And joining me today for this conversation, first on my left is a longtime friend and evangelist, Rawel. He'll be bringing his perspective. And on my right, a friend and founder of a local ministry here in Orlando called SALT is Eric. And we've been talking about this climate change agenda or phenomena, depending on how you look at it. And we've decided to bring this conversation, this special conversation, to the listeners of this broadcast so that listeners would be able to understand what's happening and why this is so very important. This is sort of an urgent message, so there will be a little bit of urgency in my voice when I speak on this topic, because frankly, time is growing short. A one world government is or has been formed, and that's the first thing we want to take a look at right now. We want to take a look at this, what the Bible has to say on this, and then we'll take a look at what's happening today in the news and how this is a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. If you have your Bibles, please turn to the book of Revelation, and we'll start with chapter 13, and we'll look at 15 through 17. Revelation chapter 13, verses 15 through 17. Now, I will state that there was another show that was done when Pope Francis had his historic visit to the United States. And that show can be found on our YouTube channel at BibleTalk, one word, with Amery. And if you go down to the show that's entitled, I believe it's Pope Francis's Historic Visit, One World Government Agenda. If you listen to at least the first show, you'll begin to see where we're headed with this. Okay, also, if you're listening on skyangelsradio.com, you could visit the YouTube site, and in the description box for this broadcast, Climate Change, One World Government, One World Religion, you'll find a link to a presentation done by Mark Finley. And this presentation is going to be on some prophetic symbols. But now we're going to give you a little bit of an introduction to this, and I hope you will go follow this link and watch the presentation. It's about an hour, and it will teach you the historical, biblical points and where they intersect, and how you can know the identity of the beast and what the beast's mark is. Okay, gentlemen, welcome to the show once again. Let's go ahead and look at Revelation chapter 13, 15 through 17. I'll go ahead and read 15, and Raul, could you do 16 for us? And then
sure.
Eric, would you mind please doing 17?
Yep.
Verse 15 says, "And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed.
And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads.
And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name."
All right, thank you. The first thing I want to do with this is I want to show how the Bible actually predicts a one world government. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the actual language of the text. Let's look at verse 15. Verse 15 says, and he. I want you to notice the pronoun he. Okay, he is referring to one thing. Okay, it's referring to one thing or one entity or one body or one power. It says he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. And the image of the beast is, so if we think about this, the image of the beast is getting power from him or from another entity, another beast. So if the power is coming from him, that means this beast is controlling the image of the beast, or has given the image of the beast power to do work for it. Okay? So he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So this is a situation where one power has given another power the ability to do something, and is actually working through this image, using the image as a proxy. Okay, so this is just a carbon copy of the beast. Okay, now for these symbols, you have to watch the video, the link that we'll put in the description box. It's going to be a presentation done by Mark Finley. Verse 16 says, and he causeth all. Okay, this is very important because it says he again, and then he causeth all. So all, the Bible's going to explain itself here. It's going to tell us, it's going to give us a breakdown of what all is. And we're going to look for any exceptions. And he causeth all, both small and great. Okay, this to me would be in terms of power, or what would you say this would be? Small and great. Power, influence, status. Mm-hmm. Okay. He causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor. Okay. So it doesn't matter if you're rich. Usually these days the rich are kind of privileged, right? But here in this situation, you notice everyone's kind of lumped together. Right. No one is going to be exempt. Free and bond. Now we know there's still slavery going on. I caught a story just recently about a situation of slavery in London. People, so no matter what your status, no matter what your finances, if you are on this earth, okay, this beast is going to cause you to do something. And in verse 16 it says to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. Verse 17 says, and that no man, okay, might buy or sell, save or except he that have the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Okay, so what we're doing here with these texts we are establishing that there is a one world government or power that acts as a government, which is causing the entire world to do something. Okay, that's all we want to establish here as a premise. Any comments on this, guys?
Yeah, I mean, so we see that although this, whenever I first heard about this, mm-hmm. or, whenever you hear about this idea of a one world system, initially, you think like that can never happen. Like no way this world to mm-hmm. enforce something on the entire world and threaten them with the point of death.
It seems ridiculous.
Yeah, when you first hear about it, when you're coming out of a secular mentality, you think this is like just Bible fairy tale stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But then when you actually look at the news and see what's happening and see what's taking place, you realize that this is very real.
Right.
This is not just some far-fetched idea that religious fanatics have thought about, but this is, because right now anyone that tends to believe in one world government, the world looks at them as though they're like total fanatics.
Right.
They're in left field. They're just a strange group of mm-hmm. these guys that are like these militia guys that live in the mountains of Montana, and they're armed and ready for a battle or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they want to associate if you believe in a one world government.
Right.
But we see things just on the news and taking place.
It's starting to happen. Any comments?
Yeah. It's like he was saying. I know for me, back in the world before I became a Christian, a lot of conspiracy theorists or whatever I would call them. It was something that I had seen a lot of, especially among my friends. After 9/11, after just all this stuff, and so when I came into the church, a lot of this stuff kind of turned me off in the sense that I'm like, oh, I'll probably mean something else, or oh, that's just conspiracy theorism or whatever. So to see some of the things that are going on now, and what we'll talk about later, as far as like climate change and the way that this one world government is kind of forming is kind of, it's real,
right?
It's happening, and so.
It's funny that you mention conspiracy theories, because as Bible-believing Christians, whether we like it or not, we believe, if you believe Revelation 13, you believe in the greatest cover-up in America,
conspiracy,
in the entire history of the world,
human history, right?
Right.
So we believe in the biggest conspiracy theory this world has ever seen,
right?
And so we need to get used to
labels,
that label, and people looking at us like, you are nuts. Are you saying that this is this? And we're saying, yeah, it is. That's what the Bible says. And they're going to look at us like, you Bible believing fanatic fundamentalists.
Fundamentalist, dirty word. That's becoming a dirty word now.
Yeah. And it just made me think, if Ellen White had that in her vocabulary at that time, I think she would have substituted that for alarmist, because she says that we're going to be called alarmists,
right?
And people are going to kind of shy away from us because we're alarmists. And so I think with everything, Satan always has a counterfeit, and so he's been kind of getting people on some other type of stuff to and where the world now looks at conspiracy theorism and theories as something to be avoided and have a negative stigma to it.
Right.
So then when we go out there and talk about what the Bible says, then we're just classified in that group.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why, it's talked about that, when the third angel's message needs to be combined with the medical missionary work. There's no other way to do it. We have to be able to create those genuine friendships with people and meet their needs and that kind of thing, and that's the entering wedge to present. We can present the third angel's message in a way where once they know us and we're not some crazy person, and they see that we're really have that character, that Christ of Christ, then they're more likely to be like, what, let me look into this.
Right.
Let me see if this is something that the Bible really says.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because the whole health field, can you imagine? Remember when we were kids?
Yeah.
Vegetarian, vegan.
Yeah.
You were weird. Now,
yeah,
you're actually cool.
Yeah.
It's actually a cool thing now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The whole, everyone, you meet people from all walks of life who are vegetarian or vegan and more extreme than SDAs.
Right.
And I don't even think we're extreme. I think we're just normal, just logical. Because ours is out of hey, the food's going to get bad. You might want to stop eating it.
Right.
And that's what everyone else is doing. But people will get going off and doing their own thing, and different tangents, different types of diets. Right. But I want to kind of redirect back to something we were talking about with this one world government using deadly force. Right? Now, what I've noticed recently in the news has been very, very alarming. We have freedom of speech in this country, but it seems like the consequences for our speech are catching up so quickly. Like, it seems like where you would speak before, there would be no consequences, little to nothing. But now you can't even say anything, and the whole world, the Twitter gang, the Facebook mob, the whole internet just jumps on you now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for example, let's take it to climate. Professors and scientists and people who deny the man-made catalyst for this so-called climate event that's going to jeopardize Earth's existence. These people they've been given another name, I would say akin to conspiracy theorists, and they're climate deniers. It's kind of like flat Earth people, flat Earth society, right?
Yeah.
But basically, it's a euphemism for idiot.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You're an idiot. You're out of your mind.
Right.
You're a conspiracy theorist. Conspiracy. Like I remember I was watching something on, not to digress too much, but it was talking about the original Rick Ross. There's a rapper named Rick Ross. But he took his name from a drug dealer that got big in the 80s, I believe, in South Central Los Angeles. Now, this guy had ties. He said that the drugs were being pumped in through the government. Okay, and there's some documentaries on this. Right away, they I remember watching the documentary, and there's a reporter that ended up dying somehow. But he exposed this story, and they interviewed the CIA director, and the CIA director, the first thing out of his mouth was, this sounds like some sort of conspiracy theory. And it turns out that the whole thing was true. Now we know it was true. So what they do is, whenever they want to turn off the public, label it a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Label it foolishness, right? Conspiracy theory is a nice way of saying foolishness.
Yeah.
And what happens is the public automatically goes into ridicule mode, right? Yeah. And anytime you want to silence someone, you're a conspiracy theorist. You sound like and that's how you shut anything down these days, right?
Right.
So what's happening now with these people? They're being shut down left and right, but the rhetoric is getting so heated where they're talking about jailing people who deny climate. Mm-hmm. This is insane. Like people with advanced degrees and who understand the Constitution are actually talking about jailing people who deny that there's man-made, that this situation we have is man-made and not cyclical. So you can't even have freedom of thought or expression. So you can see where this is going in terms of religion. Now, remember we caught an article. Let's talk about that article a little bit. Mm-hmm. They were talking about how they wanted to inject this into every church and every mosque and every temple. Remember that?
Right. Yeah.
And they wanted to use religion. They wanted to teach it and make it a part of the religion in a way, to kind of push it out there and get people to believe in this, and it's scary.
Well, I mean, so when you look at the history of the climate change agenda and getting laws passed and getting any kind of, change to take place within the world, they were very unsuccessful for a long time, and they've been trying to get climate change laws enacted and passed for a long time. When Bush came in, George Bush W, he basically got us out of the whole talk. He kind of just axed it and just got us out of the mix. And then when Barack Obama came in, that's when we're back engaged. Okay, but still, even for Barack, his first term, he didn't really do much. Second term, he even didn't do much. But when did everything change?
I think it was the Pope, wasn't it?
The Pope.
Yeah, the Pope. The Pope.
I mean, everything changed. If the Pope did not get involved before Paris, mm-hmm. Paris probably would not have been as successful without him. I mean, so they're talking about how what the climate change agenda needed was faith.
Right.
Once it got faith, that's when everything changed. And that's why they're now saying you need to go back and go to your mosques, go to your synagogues, go to your churches, and teach that this is a moral responsibility. Because that's the thing now. It's getting tagged with morality.
Right.
And what better place to teach morality than
church.
we've been teaching it for hundreds of years at church and synagogue.
Exactly. That's an excellent point.
That's when things changed.
That's an excellent point. That was the turning point. Any comment?
It's interesting because when you think about, things started changing around that. Yeah, that he wrote the encyclical, supposed to be a way to prevent climate change. You look at CNN. I saw a CNN video. They did a survey on the general population. How many of you think the climate, if something isn't done, that pretty much the question was along the lines of, how many of you truly believe that something needs to be done about climate change? And over 90% of the population, regardless of religion, regardless of whatever, you could be atheist, you could be whatever, but over 90% of the population said, yes, we need to do something.
Right.
And so it's just, it's crazy, man. We see it coming, and there's videos now that just came out, a documentary. I don't know if I'm taking this off course, but this just came to mind. But a documentary called Cowspiracy. Have you guys heard of that documentary?
No, but I know where you're going.
Okay, so you talked about how I believe a plant-based diet is going to play a big role. When in Cowspiracy, it pretty much what it talks about is how 28% of carbon emissions and all that stuff happens from eating meat. These animals are releasing this, and it's helping to cause at least a fourth of the climate change.
Wow.
So when you look at that, it's like, okay, now there's going to be a big push for a plant-based diet. And so when we look at the writings, in Ellen White, Council on Diet and Food, Ministry of Healing, we see that it's the entering wedge. People's minds are going to get cleared up. And when you look at this, I was just looking at the verse. It says that he causeth all to both small and, whatever, to receive a mark on the right hand. He causes them to worship the beast. It's all about causing. It's about forced worship.
Right.
And when you introduce forced worship, people are going to have to make a decision. I don't like being forced, So there's something not right about this. Right. And they're gonna come and they're gonna have to make a choice, and they're gonna decide either this is wrong, what's going on with one world government, with having people to follow, worship the beast, quote unquote, all this stuff, or it's the right thing to do. I'm just gonna go with it,
Right.
And there's gonna be two groups of people: those that give into forced worship, or those that want. That aren't going to give into that. And so I believe being on a plant-based diet, getting the population on a plant-based diet will make them more aware to make the right decision and when the end comes.
That's a good point.
And so when you said all these people are becoming vegan, they're becoming vegetarian, it's like the end thing now. That's how you know the end is coming. Because when God makes that loud cry at the end, people are going to have to make a decision. And with their minds cleared up, hopefully they'll make the right decision.
Some of them will see it. Okay, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Oh, interesting.
I wanted to talk more about this force and the direction of which these people would have to go. There was something I was watching. I watched Dr. Bohr's 20-part series on the Three Angels Message, and I've watched this whole thing on the sanctuary. I mean, we're talking about that was another 25 hours, and this is something interesting that stood out. Revelation 13. Verse 16. It says, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads." Now you notice God's people only get the mark where? In the forehead, right? It's a settling into the truth, they say, right? It's in your forehead. But this mark of the beast it can go in two different directions. One is into the forehead. That's a settling into, so they believe in this Sunday. They believe in this this is the day that God set aside to what we see now to save the earth, and it's the true Sabbath. We can see how the great deception is going to happen when Satan impersonates Christ, and how he's going to point them to this Sabbath. We all need to do this. We need to get on board. This is good for the earth. This is how we, maybe, that's a possibility.
Can you elaborate on that a little more? So then that way they're there might be people thinking, how does Sunday worship tie into the environment?
Okay. All right. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Okay. Let me finish this point, and then I'm gonna go back to that, because I don't want to forget what I was saying. So there's going to be two marks. One's going to be a forehead. So these people who settle into their truth, to a false truth, or they accept the false truth coming from this beast. And then the other mark will be in their right hand. And this will be for work. Because the Bible goes on to say in verse 17, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or except he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So what's happening? What's going to happen is this beast is going to put everyone in the world into a bind, where you're going to have to make a decision between basically dying. Okay, the image of the beast should be killed if you don't worship, and then everyone's going to be forced to either take the mark in their right hand or in their forehead. So if you want to work, you'll take this mark. Okay, it might mean signing up for or signing on to some system, or agreeing to something, this whole package deal they have. Whatever, we're not exactly sure how they're going to present it, but we know it will be distinguishable from what God is presenting and what we're teaching. We know it will be distinguishable. So going back to what you're saying now with the worship aspect. Now, if you're for the listeners, I asked you in the beginning to go ahead and check out the link in the description box. It's going to point you to these prophetic symbols. It's going to teach you about these different beasts and how you can understand who the beast is. All right, so the beast is the Vatican, and the Vatican, the head of the Roman Catholic Church, they are proposing, and it didn't pass this time, but we'll get back to that. But they have proposed a one world day of rest, and that day of rest just happens to be Sunday. Now, this is important because Sunday is a day that they claim to have created as a day of worship, and it's extra biblical. It's outside of the Bible, but it was done under the ecclesiastical or the power of the church. So what the Vatican is suggesting is that we all keep a day off, and then with this day they've introduced Family Day in Europe because kids go to school on Saturday as well. So this would be a great time for families to come together, and then a lot of workers have to work on Sunday, the first day. So if they have that day off, the families can be together. And then now they're linking it to the climate change. So if we're all off and we don't have to drive our cars and we don't have to operate our factories, we're not emitting as much carbon. So they're proposing this as sort of a panacea to solve all the problems. And then we can worship on that day as well. So we believe that this is the mark of the Vatican's authority, Sunday. So for more information on that, please definitely watch the link that's in the description box. It will make it plain for you. It'll break it down for you. So that's the one world rest agenda. And the Vatican was trying to push it through. But from what we've been reading and from what you say, Rawell, it wasn't successful. Did you find out any more on that?
Well, it's not that it wasn't successful. It's just it's not part of this Paris Treaty, and it's not going to be that out in the open right now. although it was in his encyclical,
Mm-hmm.
it's not part of the Paris Treaty. So we have to figure out. We can theorize when that's going to be adopted, how that's going to happen. We know it's right there. They kind of go hand in hand, but it's just not there yet.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's and the reason I think the reason why we're not seeing it is because in the Paris Treaty, they kind of more discuss the guidelines from which each country can develop strategies to attack climate change. So like in the Paris Treaty, there are things like we've agreed we don't want it to go past 2 degrees,
Right.
higher. We've agreed to help out financially the smaller countries. So it's just kind of like the guidelines kind of thing. But now each country will develop their own plan.
Okay.
And now I believe that we don't know. I don't think we will know for sure. But I believe that it might have been proposed as a strategy. Hey, 1 day a week, no carbon emissions. Day of rest. If it hasn't been proposed yet at the treaty, it might. It's probably something that at least one country is going to do as a strategy.
Right.
It makes sense. 1 day, no one work. That can help.
And who's gonna do that? According to prophecy,
the U.S.
It's gonna be the United States.
The U.S. is going to be probably the first major country
You have that quote
to do it. Yeah, let me.
in the book Last Day Events. While you're looking it up,
It's in Great Controversy.
Okay.
Yeah. But this is more referring. The quote is more referring to how we how it's going to happen. The Sunday law is going to happen, and how things are going to be good for a little while, but then things are going to go bad. The disasters are going to happen and all that stuff again, and they're not going to know why, and then they're going to blame it on us.
Let's break that down.
So
do you want to break that down? Why the Sunday law and then the disasters, or do you want me to?
Well,
let's do the quote first.
Yeah. Let me read the quote.
Then let's talk about that.
As he's looking that up, you can just see that it's the U.S. because that second beast in Revelation 13, which makes the image to the first beast, that's the United States, and I'm sure they can see that on that link.
Right, the United States in prophecy, right?
Right. So you can see the United States is the second beast that comes up out of the earth. That
verse 13:11 for our listeners. Go ahead.
Right. And so that's why we can see that the papacy is going to let the U.S. push their agenda, be the power, almost like the enforcer of their agenda, and that's right there. That's Revelation 13. That's what it's all about.
You notice how the U.S. kind of takes precedent in all things, like the fight against ISIS or the fight against this or that. It's always America that has to do it. All right, Eric, go ahead.
Well, the quote here is in Great Controversy, chapter 36. And for those of you that don't know, this was written, close to
150 years ago.
150 some years ago. And this is prophesying what will happen in the end. Great Controversy, chapter 36, and we're starting on page 589, paragraph 3. And it says, in accidents and calamities by sea and by land, in great conflagrations, in fierce tornadoes and terrific hailstorms and tempests, floods, cyclones, tidal waves, and earthquakes, in every place and in 1,000 forms, Satan is exercising his power. He sweeps away the ripening harvest, and famine and distress follows. He imparts to the air a deadly taint, and thousands perish by pestilence. These visitations are to become more and more frequent and disastrous. Destruction will be upon both man and beast. And we see, one thing I just want to note there is you can see in the news animals dying for no reason.
That is bizarre.
Like no reason.
I just saw that.
Yeah,
that's bizarre. That's been happening for a few years.
Yeah, it started
different species.
It started in 2000. Believe around New Year's of 2012. Where that was the first kind of sign of beasts and animals dying out of nowhere.
That's so weird, and then they never talk about it in the news.
Oh, it was
very
on the news for a
rarely.
little bit, yeah, but
they don't expound on it.
It's not a big deal, right, for them. Even though on the news stations they say we don't know how this happened. I don't know when it's weird. Whatever, and so now it's getting blamed on climate change.
It could be fish. It could be like all sorts. Yeah, I saw that the other day.
Right.
60,000 antelope in 4 days.
Right.
This is an article. Where's the source? Some article online. What killed 60,000 antelope in 4 days? I mean,
Discovery Channel.
It's incredible.
Discovery Channel, yeah.
So,
I mean, there was a picture of fish, millions of fish that died out of nowhere, and they showed a picture of it on the news. And it looked like a gravel road because the fish were just at the surface, not moving. It just covered the whole sea. You couldn't even see the water.
So they're blaming it on climate change.
So now at least they're blaming it on climate change, and it makes sense, And as we see in Hosea, we see it in Job. I'm trying to think of the other book, another minor prophet. They talk about that the fish of the sea will teach you, and the birds of the sky will tell you, and the beasts of the earth will instruct you, and then you will know, as these judgments are on the earth, how. And let me not misquote anything. Here, I'll open up a quick one here in Hosea. It talks about how the beasts are going to play a role, and I think in Job chapter 9, someone wants to open that. I think there's one in there too.
You get that? Job 9.
Okay. Yeah. Let me see. Well, I think Micah might have it too, but let's see.
All right. While you guys are looking that up,
here you go. I got it.
You got it?
Yeah, I got
it.
I got it. So Hosea, the first mention here, or one of the mentions here, is in chapter 3, and it starts in verse 5. Chapter 3, verse 5, and it says, "Afterwards shall the children of Israel," and this kind of gives the context when you go into chapter 4. "Afterward shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days." So we know the context is the latter days. Chapter 4, verse 1, it says, "Hear the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel. For the Lord hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. By swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery, they break out, and blood toucheth blood." And here it is. "Therefore shall the land mourn, and everyone that dwelleth therein shall languish, with the beasts of the field, with the fowls of heaven, yea, the fishes of the sea also shall be taken away." And this is in the latter days.
That's Hosea what?
That's Hosea chapter 3 and verse 5.
That's interesting.
Verse 5, and then chapter 4, verses 1 through 3.
That's interesting. And that's some scary stuff, though. 60,000 antelope
in 4 days.
In 4 days, just dying off. Why? Why would it be? If let's say it was some sort of plague, wouldn't it kill a bunch of different species?
Yeah,
why is it hitting?
It's only once. Yeah.
Why is it hitting one at a time like that?
Right.
That's what's so bizarre about this. And it very well could be that this could be some sort of omen. It could be showing us that this is something beyond something that's man-made, or that this could be something else.
It is. I mean, it's
interesting.
They had in back in 2012 a bunch of red-wing blackbirds, just red-winged blackbirds. That's it. Died, fell out of the sky. Only that species.
Right.
Only that species. Certain species in the sea. In the sea, you think, okay, if something's going to die in the sea, it's not just going to be one species. It's going to be whatever's in the sea.
A whole bunch, right?
No, but it's only one species. And let me just
it's fascinating.
Show you here in Job chapter 12, verse 7 is kind of another hint about the beasts and the birds and the fish. It says, Job chapter 12, verse 7, it says, "But ask now the beasts, and they shall teach thee, and the fowls of the air, and they shall tell thee. Or speak to the earth, and it shall teach thee, and the fishes of the sea shall declare to thee. Who knoweth not in all these things that the hand of the Lord hath wrought this?" And so, what are the birds going to teach us? What are the beasts going to tell us? What is going to be declared to us by the fish? And we're seeing that this is all pointing to the latter days, the last days.
That's a great point. I think this is a sign of something definitely happening, because I've never heard of anything like this happening before.
Mm-hmm.
And very, very interesting. I want to kind of expound on something you mentioned before. I think it was the rest. No.
Well, you want me to finish this quote here? I kind of digress.
Yeah, go ahead. Finish the quote. Yeah.
Because it talked about the beast dying. And it just it continues in great controversy. 36.
Chapter 36. Mm-hmm.
Yep, chapter 36, page 589, paragraph 4. Oh, I'm sorry, page 590, paragraph 1. And then the great deceiver will persuade men that those who serve God are causing these evils. And so right before that, we talked about tornadoes, we talked about earthquakes, all that stuff.
Right. Weather events.
The class that have provoked the displeasure of heaven will charge all their troubles upon those whose obedience to God's commandments is a perpetual reproof to transgressors. It will be declared that men are offending God by the violation of the Sunday Sabbath, that this sin has brought calamities which will not cease until Sunday observance shall be strictly enforced, and that those who present the claims of the fourth commandment, thus destroying reverence for Sunday, are troublers of the people, preventing their restoration to divine favor and temporal prosperity. Thus the accusation urged of old against the servant of God will be repeated, and upon grounds equally well established. And this is 1 Kings 18, 17, and 18. It says, And it came to pass when Ahab saw Elijah, that Ahab said unto him, Art thou he that troubleth Israel? And he said, I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, in that ye have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and thou hast followed Balaam. And then the last sentence here, As the wrath of the people shall be excited by false charges, they will pursue a course toward God's ambassadors, very similar to that which apostate Israel pursued toward Elijah. And so we see here, and for me, I've read that before, it didn't click.
Right, didn't click.
But now that we see climate change being introduced,
right,
now it's like, okay, wait, so this is saying here that we're going to worship, and there's, the other quote talks about, we worship, we follow this false Sabbath, and the world will have temporal prosperity.
Right.
But then all these disasters will come back, and we will be blamed for following the fourth commandment, which by default is dishonoring the Sunday Sabbath, and because we're following the seventh-day Sabbath, and so, or the biblical Sabbath. So that's how it's going to get blamed on us for the calamities that are going to happen. And climate change is that's the only way this could happen.
Right. The only way. We see it now. We see the full picture. Right. The climate is changing, and see the thing is, the argument is it man-made or is it a natural cycle? Now I'm going to go ahead and mention this. About 2 weeks ago, I posted something on Facebook about a couple of cities that were found, ancient cities. They're saying these cities are thousands of years old. They were found under 128 feet of water. And the key to what I posted was that these cities were before the Industrial Revolution, before we started pumping out all this carbon. So if they were buried, and these cities are like intact, we're not talking about cities that were destroyed in a flood, because they would have been buried underground, right? Because in the flood, the water in the aquifers burst forth, and it was just complete tumult, right? Everything was buried, and and all evidence was buried. We're talking about cities that were affected by some sort of cyclical climate change way before the Industrial Revolution, way before we had machines, way before we had anything. So if those cities that were buried under 128 feet of water in the sea off the coast of India, if they're buried under that much water, and these guys here are talking about we're facing a couple of feet. I mean, and they're saying that all these couple of feet, these few feet, are a result of man-made activity. What caused the one before? What caused 128 feet? So these are some of the arguments that they're ignoring because they have an agenda, and the agenda is world government. And now they have their pretext. What a lot of people need to understand is that a lot of things happening in politics today follows a pretext. And quite honestly, the pretext is it's sort of like a Trojan horse to get what they need passed in order to have more power for the political elite. And the method they use is usually bearing false witness. One of the Ten Commandments, breaking the 10th commandment. They'll blame something on someone else, like people, like us, and then they'll use that as impetus to go ahead and do what they want to do. And in this case, taxation. I mean, it's genius. I heard somebody talking about Al Gore the other day. I'm not sure how factual this is, take this with a grain of salt, but they said that Al Gore, when he left office, he was negative 150,000 in the hole. I don't know how that could be with his vice presidential salary, but they said 150,000. They said after he introduced his film on climate change, he was several hundred millions in, in the positive. I also heard that the Rothschilds set up a bank in England to collect carbon taxes from different people around the world. This is nothing more than colonialism. This is a one world government collecting tax from people. So that's what a lot of people are arguing. Mm-hmm. But if they can see what they're doing is they're fear mongering the world into believing that it's our fault. Mm-hmm. And I see something else happening here too. This isn't necessarily exactly related, but what they're doing, another thing that they're doing is they're preventing the so-called third world, the undeveloped nations, from industrializing and bettering themselves. And then they're creating a system of dependence. So the system of dependence has gone from foreign aid, right, to starving countries, foreign aid. So it's gone from this to a different type of foreign aid now. So they're promising in this accord, in this Paris Treaty Accord, Climate Accord, they're going to give money. The industrialized nations will give money to the third world nations as sort of reparations for harming the earth, per se. But they're going to force them not to develop. That's the key. So they're going to keep them. Do you understand what's happening here? This is a power play. This is colonialism. This is a form of neo-colonialism. This is what the European powers did before to different countries. They taxed them and then made sure they couldn't develop. And now they're doing it again under the guise of climate change. But it's really about power. And on top of that, now we have the Vatican. And this is the scary part, because this is the part that actually fulfills Bible prophecy. We have the Vatican injecting this one world day of religion. If it's from the Vatican, it has a religious connection to it, no matter what they say it's for, because it's from the Vatican. And they're proposing that all the world's religions get together and keep that day in honor, of what the Pope has said. So this is what we see. We see a massive agenda that is multi-pronged, but what we're arguing today is that this is aimed at a one world government, but then we have the money part. We didn't even really get into that. That's verse 17. Revelation 13:17 says that no man might buy or sell save that he that had the mark. And some other interesting developments in that aspect is we're moving away from cash. The only way you can enforce verse 17 that no man might be able to buy or sell is if it's electronic. It has to be electronic. In order for you to control that, it must be electronic, because I can give Rawell $10 for something right now and no one would know. You see what I'm saying? But if you're forced to do it, if you do away with cash and cash no longer has value, and then you can set up a system to where the whole world is connected, I would say it would have to be electronic. Sweden is the first country to go cashless, and others are bound to follow. And this is the trend. Now, on your smartphone, you have your credit card picture shows up, and you can pay with your phone now. We're not going to need cash pretty soon. And they're going to have all sorts of great arguments why we need to get rid of cash and this and that. But this is all a part of the one world government. So if we're all following this dictate from this beast, from one beast, and we're all, one system of money, which the Vatican has proposed, they've proposed a one world central bank. This was a few years ago. And they said the Bible has imbued them with the power or the responsibility to do this because of corrupt crony capitalism and other things of that nature. Any comments on this, guys?
Yeah, I'll comment on verse 17. Something you pointed out earlier that I didn't notice was that it says that you would receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead.
Right, that was Stephen Moore that broke that down. I had to.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because if you think about it, they're going to be people that know, but they're gonna receive the mark on their right hand because they're going to know, but they're going to do it anyway.
The spirit processes. A lot of Adventists are going to take the mark.
And so when you look at Revelation 18, is it 18? Yeah, 18:23. It talks about all the nations that will be lost in the last days. It says, "And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, and for by thy sorceries all nations were deceived." And so, all nations were deceived by sorcery, right? And so, when you look at the Greek word for sorcery, it means pharmakia. Right, which sounds a lot like pharmaceuticals, medicine. And so here's my theory and how I see everything kind of playing out with the whole buying or selling at the last days. How many Adventists are going to be lost, even knowing this truth? Is this reason? And this is what I believe. I believe that people in the last days are going to be sick because they're not following the health message. So in order for them to get better, they believe that they're going to have to get some medicine. And so when it comes to your own personal health, you'll do anything, right? So, you might have been getting your insulin shots all the time, but instead of changing your lifestyle, the whole thing happens, hey, you can't buy or sell, and you're like, you know what, God will understand, I need my insulin. I need my insulin. I could serve him with my insulin.
So there's going to be some compromises.
So there's going to be compromise because people are going to be sick.
Rational compromises.
And they're going to be like, you know what? I'll receive the mark. I need this medication.
You know what? What you're saying is plausible because in the Spirit of Prophecy, there was some discussion of people who weren't training themselves to trust in God. They weren't day by day putting their faith and trust in Him. And when it came down to it, when this mark came out, they didn't know what to do. They couldn't trust in God, and they took it. And these are going to be Adventists, people who knew, but they weren't establishing their faith in God so that, like Elijah, they would be fed in another way, right? But see, that goes into our teachings in terms of our the backup plan that God has for us, and that's our country living message. That's why we have that. That's for you to go out and live. That's the plan. That's the exit strategy if you're not following that. But see, then a lot of people, she mentions this in the Adventist Home, one of the tests for a lot of SDA people will be whether or not you allow other people to stay in your home in the last days once they flee the cities. So there will be some who haven't prepared but are going to flee, and they'll be able to stay with you, right? So that's in the Adventist Home, the book, The Adventist Home. But yeah, a lot of people will take this mark because they were not prepared. Right. They didn't trust in God.
And so it's I think it's important, especially for both Adventists now and for people in the world. We need to really be pushing the medical missionary work and teaching them a healthy lifestyle and a plant-based diet, teaching them natural remedies and I mean, there's gonna be people in the last days who are gonna be sick, and they don't want they feel like they're gonna need this medication. But if we can coach them to reverse their type 2 diabetes, or to get rid of that ear infection without getting antibiotics or whatever, if we can teach them that, then God will use us to be able to save some of his people in these last days, and so that's why I think it's so important, pushing the health message to both people in the church, because there are a lot of people in the church that aren't following it.
They're not.
And both people outside the church.
Everyone, yeah, that's true. It's
going to be key. It's going to be key in people not being lost in the last days. It's going to be key.
It's integral, you're right, because it, like you said in the book, Counsels on Diets and Foods, it clears up your mind. And the mind is what Satan is attacking. Not only the mind, but the immune system. He wants to kill you, and now he's killing you through your food. And he's using these evil companies that put these toxins and poisons and all these harmful substances in the food, and the FDA lies about it, USDA lies about it. They're all connected. And then you eat it, and then you die early. You have kids dying of leukemia. Everyone is getting breast cancer. Everyone's getting prostate cancer. I see it day in and day out. It's incredible. The health message in the book Counsels on Diets and Foods is said to be was God gave it to us out as a message of mercy. That's it. It's to get people who are sick to not be sick. God gave it to us so that we can spread it as a message of mercy. And then we can use it as an entering wedge, like you said.
And let me just share a verse to kind of back up for some of the listeners that maybe aren't seeing a connection between healthy diet, healthy lifestyle, and being able to know what's good, or to be able to resist the evil. It's in Isaiah chapter 7 and verse 15. It says, "Butter and honey shall he eat." This is a prophecy about Christ now. It's a prophecy about Christ to Mary and Joseph. Butter and honey shall he eat, that he may know to refuse the evil and choose the good. Isaiah 7:15. And so, when you look at, in some versions say milk and honey. Right. When you look at milk and honey, when you look at the land of milk and honey, what was so unique about that land? The land of milk and honey, Canaan.
It was
fertile. Fertile.
Yeah.
Right? They brought back lots of fruits.
Right, and grapes
and veggies, right?
Right.
And so, when it says, some people say, hey, that refers to a simple diet. But when I look at this, land of milk and honey, this here, milk and honey, I'm thinking a diet that's high in fruits and vegetables. A diet that will help you in knowing to refuse the evil, that you may know to refuse the evil and choose what's right.
Right. A lot of people within our church are going to be lost because they haven't gotten control of their diet, and they're not going to be able to stand in the time of testing because they won't have the mental fortitude to get through it, and they won't have the patience. They won't, And the diet is a big question. I mean, it's a big test, and it's funny how the world is passing that test with flying colors, but a lot of Adventists still can't make up their mind. And she says, for those who can't make up their mind, they're going to walk away.
Yeah, I mean,
it's interesting.
Something really quick. When you talk about how diet is how it's a discipline. It's a discipline. And when you look at, like, for example, Adam and Eve, they could have been tested on anything, but they were tested on the point of diet.
Right, they were.
Right, there was food involved. Daniel, before he started his whole ministry, was tested on the point of diet.
He was. Very true.
Daniel chapter 1.
Jesus was tested on diet by Satan.
Jesus, before he started his ministry, had to overcome the temptation of diet.
He had to overcome diet.
And so when you look at those things and you see, wow, if I can have self-control when it comes to my diet, then it'll be so much easier for me to have self-control in other areas of my life.
Very true.
If you look at Matthew 24, it talks about in the last days people are going to be they were in Noah's days, they were eating and drinking,
right, diet
and marrying and giving to marriage. So relationships, another thing. Or when you look at the days of Lot, eating and drinking. And so there were uncontrolled diets,
right,
and it led to the perversion of these cities.
Mm-hmm.
And even looking at oh man, I had it in 1 Corinthians 10:31,
mm-hmm.
it says, for whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all to the glory of God. Mm-hmm. And so it's something that I believe we as Christians need to do. I mean,
mm-hmm.
It's going to help us discipline wise. It's going to help our health. It's going to clear up our minds. We'll have a deeper connection. We'll be able to have like this deeper connection with the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit can get through all,
mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? So
right.
Anyway, that's kind of.
And funny enough, that's why a lot of the New Agers choose that diet, because they talk about the clarity of mind. They know. People understand this, Mm-hmm. Any comments, Raul, on this?
No, it's powerful. It's very true. I mean, it's, we were studying about character last week,
mm-hmm.
and one thing about character that I've been reading and researching is that in order to have a Christ-like character, you have to overcome appetite.
Mm.
If you don't overcome appetite, then you will not develop to that Christ-likeness. It's that plain and simple. And it's funny because when you look at people,
mm-hmm.
and I'm not trying to overgeneralize here,
mm-hmm.
but when you look at people who are very overweight, and I don't want to go down a road where we're gonna get in trouble, but they lack a lot of self-discipline.
They lack discipline. They know that.
Right. And go ahead.
It's hard for me I don't see a ton of them being very, very consecrated to the truth. It's one of those things where I don't want to overgeneralize, like I said, but
it is a stumbling point.
I've seen a lot of friends and people that I know that are overweight, obese, and when it comes to studying, to really understanding the truth and taking that self-discipline to study and know for yourself what you believe, they lack it because they don't know how to say no to themselves here.
Right.
They're not going to be able to say no to themselves over here or over here, over here. So you can see where if you don't overcome appetite, you're not going to get to that next level of being ready for translation. Because when you're ready for translation, as I've been reading more about character, your mind has to be so focused. When you go to pray, you can't be all over the place. That's why God says to go to your closet.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you go to your closet, you're trying to get rid of distractions because you're trying to get so focused on your mind with God. That's the only way God can talk to us, is through here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got that clogged and just jumbled with all kinds of perverted foods, and you cannot develop that focus. And that's all he needs. That's all the devil wants.
That's what he wants.
For you to lack that connection, where it's a real deep connection, that's all he cares about. He doesn't even care if you go to church, if you show up every Sabbath, if you go to church he doesn't care. But if you don't get to that point where you are having communion with the Holy Spirit, then that's where we're,
that's what he wants.
Not going to make it.
Can I piggyback real quick on that? In the book Temperance, page 12, Ellen White saw a vision. And the vision was Satan was with his angels, and they were planning how to make mankind fall. How can we make mankind fall? And discussing whatever, and then Satan finally figures Satan would come up with a plan, and he's like, you know what? We're gonna get them through pretty much. He described different types. He said diet. He pretty much said diet. If you read Temperance, page 12. He says we're going to get them through their diet. We're going to get them through and he even mentions foods like foods that are
rich.
Even mentions vegetables and stuff like that. And I honestly refer, because he's talking about perverting these things. I honestly think he's referring to things like GMO. Type of things and
that's a perversion. That to me, that's a satanic perversion. GMOs.
Yeah, because if you think about it, if he can, if he's like, God's people are going vegetarian, vegan, how am I going to get them?
Right.
I can't get them through the meat, so how can I get them? So then they're figuring out ways. Satan, I believe, because not only if he perverts those things, would it be bad for people that eat them directly, but the animals eat these things.
Right.
And there's so many studies. I won't go into that, but there's so many studies on how these things affect our bodies.
Right, changing our DNA. They're causing cancer. I mean, look, if you have a vegetable, quote unquote vegetable, that produces poison in and of itself, inside itself, that can't be from God. That can't be from God. And then, in order for this vegetable to be protected, you got to spray on some of Monsanto's, good stuff. Their Roundup, and the active ingredient in that, which is killing a lot of people, is the glyphosate. They're finding it in excised tumors. They're finding glyphosate in it.
Wow. I mean, there was a news article.
They're killing people.
Yeah,
with this
there was a news article recently. They're making GMO fish.
Yeah,
you guys saw that?
Yeah,
you guys see that?
It's already out.
It's a news story. GMO fish.
Gigantic salmon.
They're being sold in the U.S. now, and they don't have to have any kind of label.
No, yeah. See, there's
no label.
See, and that's also of Satan, because if I give you something to eat and I take away your choice and I tell you, oh yeah, it's just salmon. I don't tell you it's GM salmon. You know what I mean? Right. Like, it's not just salmon. That would indicate to me that it's the way God made it. Mm-hmm. But no. This is Frankenfish. This is what you made, right? So,
yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole nother topic. Let's go ahead and wrap this up here. To the listeners, this talk has been on climate change, one world government, one world religion. I encourage you to go to the BibleTalk with Amery channel on YouTube.com, and I have some videos up on some audio actually on Pope Francis's historic visit and the One World Agenda. Go ahead and check out those. There's 5 or 6 parts, I believe, and definitely check out the video in the link in the description box. The link to a presentation done by Mark Finley on the beast and the mark of the beast. You have to understand the symbols in order to understand what we're talking about here. But what's happening is this climate change agenda, there is more than meets the eye, and we have to fight this thing, and we have to understand what it means in order for us to really prosper and live as a people on this planet. It's come to that. So anyway, this has been Amery with Bible Talk, and I want to thank my special guests, Raul and Eric, and I hope to have you guys back sometime soon. Everyone, thank you very much, and God bless.